Okay, so once again, thank you for coming this evening, coming to this talk that I've entitled Awakening the Trusting Heart. It's obviously touched a nerve because so many of you have turned up and so many other people were interested and wanted to come this evening but couldn't make it for one reason or another. Okay, I thought I'd begin by just giving you a few reasons as to why I'm giving this talk. Okay, so one personal reason, was that many years ago, 25, 30 years ago, I profoundly distrusted myself, so much so that I believed that I was evil. I had this view or this belief that because of some of the thoughts and the impulses I used to experience, the feelings I used to have, I used to judge this, evaluate this as evil. I used to believe that I was an evil person. And eventually I discovered through somebody else's kindness and through meditation, that it's not true. That there's a great deal that can be trusted, a great deal that can be, if you like, celebrated. So in a way, for me, for many years, going back at least 26 years, maybe more, there's been a kind of cry in me, a kind of cry of, or this desire to wave up the flag of trust. You know, I get a particular kind of happiness, a particular kind of satisfaction if I can observe people trusting life or trusting each other or trusting themselves. And if I can notice that my behavior, my actions can contribute to somebody else having a deeper trust in life, having a deeper trust in their own human powers and intuition, for me, that is a profound source of happiness. I absolutely delight in seeing that experience. So it makes me deeply happy. So I've been inspired by the ideal of, put in negative language, but the ideal of non-exploitation. Yeah? Non-exploitation, not doing one's best, not to manipulate, not to use, not to maneuver somebody else for one's own egotistical or selfish ends. That ideal, I've had quite a deep response to. Yes, it absolutely delights me, that ideal, of non-manipulation, of non-exploitation. And the last reason why I'm giving this talk, in a way, it's a futile response. This talk, in a way, one way, is a futile response to some of the worry and disturbance that I can experience in relation to some of the world's problems, basically. The political situation in Turkey and other countries, the acts of genocide in certain countries, wars, terrorist attacks happening in certain countries, including Turkey, not least in Turkey. We had that the terror attack in Reyna in New Year's Eve just 10 months ago. And I was being asked difficult questions and uncomfortable questions by some of my students, people coming to classes, and I was struggling to find a response. And it may not be perfect, and this talk won't solve the world's problems, but for me it's a response. It's a small contribution to the process of bringing about sort of greater harmony, greater understanding, greater trust in the world. So these are the sort of background factors giving rise to this talk this evening. We need to try to define this word, trust. It's a word we can use quite easily, maybe even quite a lot, but there's no actual single definition of trust. There are a variety of definitions to this word trust. So I'm going to offer you some of those definitions now. One is to rely on the truthfulness or accuracy of, to place confidence in, to hope or expect confidently. Another one is to believe that someone or something is reliable, good, honest, effective, etc. To have confidence in someone or something. Another is believe in the reliability, truth, or ability of. And this one comes from my teacher. Trust is the confidence that we have that the other person will respond to us in the love mode. I'm going to repeat that. Trust is the confidence that we have that the other person will respond to us in the love mode. In reading around this issue of trust, there are different ideas, different theories, and different models, but I'm going to just offer you a really simple one that I think is easy to bear in mind and easy to think about. And in this model, there are three elements to trust. The first is motive. To trust someone or something, we need to think and to believe that they won't harm us, they won't exploit us, and they won't take advantage of us. And better still, that we believe that they have our best interests at heart. Yeah? I think often when we talk about trust, this is the main thing that we talk about, that we trust their intentions, we trust their motives. But another element is capability. Yeah? It's about talent and ability. So you might trust somebody's good intentions, but they may not have the knowledge or the skills or the psychological soundness to do something. You might trust my good intentions, but do not ask me any questions about tablets, smartphones, anything to do with technology. You wouldn't be very wise to ask. You couldn't trust me with respect to something like that. You might better trust me to paint the walls properly. You might not trust me to cook a certain meal. But you might trust my good intentions. It's just that, I can't help you in that area. And the third element of trust is reliability. Can you depend on that person or that organisation to do what they say they're going to do? That's really, really important. So I think this model is quite useful and practical. When you want to speak to a friend or a colleague, etc., and you feel there's some kind of trust difficulty or trust issue going on, you can think in more detail. Well, which of these three elements is it you're having a difficulty with? Maybe you do trust their intentions, but they're not keeping their word. Or they're keeping their word, but you feel that their intentions are a bit harsh, a bit unkind. So obviously, when trust is low or very low, it has a major effect on our experience. Yes, it can give rise to lots of physical tension. It can give rise to suspicion, anxiety, fear, and paranoia. I remember shortly after the Reina attack 10 months ago. I mean, I swear, in queues and in shops, etc., people a lot more. They hear a noise, and people are a lot more sort of jittery and scared and tense, etc. It really does have an effect. People are looking around. Who's the next sort of bomber? Who is it? You? Is it me? You know, there's quite a lot of suspicion. It's very, very unpleasant. We don't really want to live in a community or a society where there's those levels of suspicion and distrust and paranoia. It's really unpleasant. Conversely, if we can live and experience situations of high levels of trust, well, the opposites are true. It's so much more relaxing. Yes, we feel that we can connect with somebody in a straightforward kind of way. We don't need to go into sort of intellectual somersaults and sort of paranoid thinking. And when there's trust, it really helps people to blossom, to grow and blossom and thrive psychologically, socially, and spiritually. So this quality, this factor of trust and distrust is a crucial conditioning factor in our lives. It's said that statistically speaking, everybody has had trust issues, either in their personal lives or work life. That's everybody. It's not like 80%. It's like everybody, according to one researcher who I trust. So as I said, it can be very, very helpful to break down the word trust. It's such a big word. When you say, I don't trust you, are you saying you don't trust your boyfriend to be sexually faithful to you? Is that exactly what you're trying to say? Or are you saying you don't trust his ability to paint the walls properly? What exactly is it you're trying to say? Are you saying that you don't trust someone's ability to keep a secret? Exactly what's going on? Yeah, it can be very useful to be specific. If somebody says to you, I don't trust you, well, we don't have to react straight away or react at all. We can just sort of maybe take a breath and sort of say, that's interesting. Exactly in what ways do you mean that? Do you mean this? Do you mean that? Do you mean this? So when we can break it down, we're much more able to communicate in a manageable way, and we're much more able to find satisfying and fulfilling responses and solutions to the difficulty or the trust issue. But I think there's also a very important point that we need to bear in mind. Yeah? Like with all positive qualities, or even negative qualities actually, it's not black or white. Yeah? It's very, very unlikely that we completely and totally trust somebody in every respect. And it's very, very unlikely that we totally and completely distrust somebody in every respect. We're on a continuum. Yes, our speech and our behaviour, even our attitudes and thoughts, are constantly modifying our experiences, perceptions, and experiences of trust or distrust. Yes, I think that's a useful point. It's a process. It's a training, if you like, and I'm hoping this talk will give you, one or two ideas, one or two practices, if you like, of how we can strengthen the process of trusting and loving in our lives. I'm sure we all know from our own experiences, personal experiences, professional experiences, when trust breaks down, severely breaks down, it's quite a serious and unpleasant thing. It's not easy to rebuild and redevelop trust. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. We're much better off maintaining and cultivating levels of trust when we have it. Yes, maintaining trust is 5 times easier than repairing something that's broken down. So keep your eye on maintaining and nourishing seeds and experiences of trust in your life as much as you're able. So I'm going to be offering you now 15 points on trusting. And very, very broadly, these 15 points will fall under 3 categories. The first is cultivating trust in our communities and in society. The second broad area is cultivating trust in our various relationships. And the third broad area is cultivating trust in ourselves. Okay, so my first point is really simple. I'm going to start very, very basic, very, very simple. It's this: make mindful use of polite expressions. When we use polite expressions like the pleases and thank yous and good mornings and good evenings, yes, it does have an effect. But in particular, I'd like to stress the word mindful. When you say good morning, when you say thank you, when you say good evening, etc., can you do it mindfully? Can you do it with eye contact? Can you take the person in, even though you're just using a cultural nicety? Yes, it does have an effect. It does tend to stimulate or encourage goodwill and trust, I would say. I think if you say thank you to somebody with full attention, it can be a lovely moment of recognition and connection. It's really simple. It's not an easy practice to look at somebody in the eye and say thank you. Yeah, it sounds simple, but I've given this as homework on my courses many times, and believe me, many people struggle with it. It's really hard to catch somebody's eye and just say thank you to them. And the Turkish language, I'm not so sure about the Russian language or the German language, but the Turkish language is full of all these fixed phrases that you can say, and I think we can make use of them, as I suggested. We can make use of, kolay gelsin, for example. If it's said, as sincerely as possible to somebody, it does matter to people. Yes, they light up very often. They feel, there's almost like a relaxation. Someone's seen me. It does matter. It's taken me a long time to properly understand that. So let's not neglect the politeness and the niceties that our particular language and our culture offers us. My second point is practice random acts of kindness. You've probably heard this, you probably practiced it. So very simply, doing this just helps to make the world a more beautiful and pleasant and more trusting place. We don't need a good reason to be kind. No reason is a good reason to be kind. We can just be kind. And according to a 10-week study in 2009, people who performed random acts of kindness like holding the door open for a stranger or washing a flatmate's dishes compared to the control group were happier. And in the same study, those people who performed a wider range of acts of kindness were the happiest. Another study in 2010 gave evidence to suggest that when someone acts in a helpful and cooperative way, it affects others to 3 degrees of separation. What that means is, if I'm kind to you, you go on to be kind to somebody else, they go on to be kind to somebody else, and then they go on to be kind to somebody else. That's quite a lot of rippling out of kindness. So if we want to believe these studies, if we want to think in a bit of a scientific way, if we want to be happy, what we really need to do is perform loads and loads of random acts of kindness with as much imagination and as widely and richly as possible. And in this way, we can make society, make our communities a bit more beautiful and a bit more of a trusting environment to live in. And we can do this, we can start in our homes, on the streets, when we're shopping, when we're travelling on the bus, when we may be exercising in the gym. We can do it in the park, in restaurants, when we're in different cities and different countries. There is no limit to practicing random acts of kindness. Just a little bit of trust, a little bit of courage maybe a bit of imagination. And in this respect, there's a beautiful quote by an American writer called Amelia Earhart, who said this over 80 years ago. No kind action ever stops with itself. One kind act leads to another. Good example is followed. A single act of kindness throws out roots in all directions, and the roots spring up and make new trees. Point 3. Be hospitable to visitors, tourists, and refugees in your country. We can just apply here the golden rule. You know this rule? The golden rule I think in philosophy. Basically, treat other people the way you would wish to be treated. It's very simple. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. Yes? If you see tourists and visitors in your country who look lost, maybe they're consulting their map, you can just offer your help. You can offer your assistance. It's not complicated. Maybe they're having difficulty trying to fill up their travel card, etc. Well, if you know how to do that, you can just again see if they need any help. You can just offer your services to them, just in a simple, straightforward way. Maybe you can help people if you speak 2 or 3 languages. Maybe you can help people, maybe translate, get their message across to the shopkeeper or maybe the taxi driver. If you notice refugees who are in a very difficult situation, you could offer them food, offer them clothes. You can just do your best really to make them welcome and feel moderately safe in a strange country. I mean, I'm sure none of us here would like to to flee from war or flee from poverty. It's not a situation that somebody undertakes lightly. So that's point 3. Be hospitable to visitors, tourists, and refugees in your country. Point 4 is develop friendly connections with your neighbours. I come from London, and it's a lot easier to do this in Istanbul, believe it or not. Lot easier. Yes, this sort of culture of community and neighbourliness, at least in East London, that sort of largely disappeared in the 1950s and 60s, I think. You can just have little chats. You can say your hellos, and you can look out for each other. Look out for your neighbours. You can offer to maybe feed their cat if their cat goes on holiday. A neighbour did that to me a couple of times just in the last weeks. You can give them little gifts. That's quite easy to do in Istanbul, in Turkey. Yes, the giving of little gifts to your neighbours. Food especially, sharing food is very much a part of Turkish culture. And excellent, why not do it? We can do it. And it does cultivate, a trusting and a loving environment. If you're listening to this talk and you don't live in Istanbul, and don't live in Turkey, you live in, let's say, an individualistic Western country, well, you can still take a little risk and see what happens if you offer your neighbour some food. Maybe you could do it to coincide with public bank holidays or religious festivals, maybe Christmas time if you're living in a Christian country. And you might feel a bit embarrassed or a bit awkward, but who cares about your embarrassment or your awkwardness? The most important thing is that an act of kindness is performed. Yeah? Point 5 is actively share positive news. If we're not careful, the news nearly always means bad news or even absolutely terrible news. So without minimising the horrors and tragedies happening around the world, in many parts of the world, let's notice and give importance also to skillful and positive bits of news that we hear or we read about. And I think an enormous amount of good actions, kind actions, skillful actions is just completely taken for granted in our lives. And I don't think this taking for granted is healthy either for the individual or for society. For example, when was the last time that you read in a newspaper that today 20 million mothers woke up early to make breakfast for their families? I haven't come across a headline like that yet. Or maybe last week 3 million people gave up their seat to those in greater need. I've never come across a news report like that before. I've never come across a news report that said last week 55 million text messages carried messages of love. I haven't heard of messages like that before or reports like that. And in this connection, I'd like to bring your attention to a particular website and magazine. Yes, and it's called Positive News, and it started in the UK in 1993, and it promotes constructive journalism. So they don't just report on tragedies and problems, they report on constructive and positive responses to issues and problems going on. For example, they've carried headlines like, authorities in Oxford plan world's first zero emission zone. Majority of people keen for their wealth to have positive impact finds study. Recovering addicts design upcycled chairs to highlight society's addiction to stuff. And lastly, helpless or hopeful, how the news shapes our self-belief. Yes, so I'd like to encourage us to share good news. Share good news in conversation with our lovers, with our friends, with our colleagues and relatives, and also to share good news on social media. I think it does have an effect. Okay, moving on to point number 6, which is be aware how you speak about people who are not present. I'm going to repeat that. Be aware of how you speak about people who are not present. Are you loyal to people when they're not there? How do you speak about people when they're not in the room with you? It's a very difficult area of awareness, I'd say. It's a challenging, a difficult area of awareness. Do you start slandering people? Do you start easily criticising them? Do you start focusing on their faults and their problems? Do you talk about them truthfully, but it still leaves a negative impression of them? If you start speaking badly about other people behind their back with me, why wouldn't you do the same when I'm not there? Maybe you'll start speaking badly about me. How can I know that? I'm sure nobody here, indeed nobody, wants other people to slander them. Sometimes there'll be good reasons for talking about difficulties and somebody's faults, but generally it's just sort of slander and gossip. I have a little rule here that if I am going to speak negatively, if I am going to talk about something that's a bit difficult with somebody, 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, I hide their name. At least disguise the person's identity if you're going to talk badly about somebody behind their back. Point 7 is the complete opposite. The complete opposite. Pass on praise and compliments. This is a wonderful, wonderful practice that I've been performing for over 20 years, maybe close to 25, 26 years. So sometimes we will hear colleagues, we'll hear relatives, we'll hear friends speaking really well of people. Yeah? Aisha was speaking really well about Mehmet, for example. And in this particular practice, it's to pass on to Mehmet the good things that Aisha said about him. Yeah? This has a really positive effect. It's really, really lovely when we hear that this person or that friend is speaking really well of us behind our backs. It's the complete opposite of slander, complete opposite of gossip. And it has, as I say, a very beautiful effect. And in my experience, 8, 9 times out of 10, spontaneously, when I pass on these good words to people, they spontaneously say good things about the person who said good things about them in a very natural, sincere way that is just delightful, basically, to see and to experience. One wise man has said that what we say to people is important, but what we say about people is even more important. Point 8. Do your best to be sincere and honest. Do your best to be sincere and honest about your thoughts, about your feelings and emotions, and about your beliefs. It's not always easy because we may not always know what we think. We might not always know what we feel. But that's fine too. We can just make that clear. And also, we can think about the word honesty in a slightly different way, just in terms of your professional life, your business dealings, not trying to trick people or mislead people. Being honest in that straightforward sort of professional and business way as well. That's also very important. You feel it when in the shops, when there's money involved, when people are being straightforward and honest with you, you can relax. You can just relax when you trust them. Basically, you trust that they're not trying to manipulate you, and they do have your best interests at heart. I remember there used to be a bank worker in Guarantee, and I didn't have a clue what to do in the bank, basically, but there's a certain worker there. I would trust her with all my money. I'd just give it to her, and she would always help me. She'd always communicate to me what was the best for me, and I trusted her. And when she was transferred to somewhere else, I was a bit upset actually. She's gone. I don't know who to trust now. I really trusted her. It's very lovely to have that experience with a bank worker. It's not bad, is it? Another aspect, and I think it's, for many people, it's a sensitive issue. Another aspect of truthfulness is truthfully saying no. Yeah? When we don't say no, and we want to say no, it can create all sorts of psychological, financial, and social problems. Yes, we can experience lots of resentment, tension, pressure. It's not very healthy, really. So I'd like to encourage us, as politely as possible, with friendliness, to say no when we do need to say no. If you sometimes say no to me, I can trust your yeses so much more. That when you say yes to me, I can feel confident that you're really saying yes to me, rather than just you feel social pressure, or you're just being polite, etc. So please learn to say no, hopefully in a polite and in a friendly manner. Another aspect, actually I've mentioned it within the three elements of trust, absolutely crucial. Another aspect of honesty, truthfulness, is when you say you are going to do something, it means keeping your word. It means keeping your word. That is not a small thing. And the researcher, the professor and researcher, Brené Brown, excellent TED talk, I can recommend it. It's called The Anatomy of Trust. The Anatomy of Trust. She's uncompromising here. She starts speaking in scientific research terms. She uses the word reliability. It's not about being reliable once. I turned up on time once. I did this once. She says reliability means doing it time and time again. You're keeping your word over and over and over again. So it's not a small thing. It's a very big thing. In practical terms, in ordinary conversations, in ordinary social life, frankly, generally speaking, I encourage people not to make promises and not to give their word, and to make that clear. I'm not promising. I'll do my best, but I'm not promising. Yeah, that's probably a lot more truthful and a lot more realistic if we can behave and speak like that. Yeah, but if you give your word, well, your word is your honour, basically. Sometimes we can give our word far too easily and not really realise what we've said. And in this connection, there's a great quote by Stephen Covey. He says, "By making and keeping promises to ourselves and others, little by little, our honour becomes greater than our moods." I'm going to repeat that. By making and keeping promises to ourselves and others, little by little, our honour becomes greater than our moods. Okay, point 9. Point 9 is, if you don't know, say you don't know. Okay? Really, this is part of the previous point about honesty, but I want to give it a separate category because I think it could be very useful. So some people seem to find it really, really difficult to say they don't know. It's almost like to say that means they're a failure or they're inadequate, or it's somehow shameful to say you don't know. And I'm not talking about profound psychological and spiritual truths. I'm talking things like, do you know where the cinema is, on the streets? I'm talking really simple things like directions on the streets. This is not complicated existential philosophy. It's really, really simple things. Do they know a simple piece of information? And I think another aspect of this, another aspect of truthfulness in this respect is in conversations, in communications, making it clear the basis of your knowledge. What is the basis of your knowledge? Is it something that your auntie told you when you were 9 years old that you've been repeating regularly for 30 years? Is it my auntie said? Are you making it clear this is your auntie's point of view? Or have you read 10 books on the subject and have you been thinking about it for 20 years? Well, we can make that clear. Is this piece of information that you're passing on so confidently, was it just listening to some gossip at the bus stop? What is the basis of, your authority, if you like? Let's be honest, let's just be quite straightforward. Just because you've read 2 articles on the subject, it doesn't make you an authority or an expert on the subject. Yes, I think we should be upfront. We should be honest about the basis or the foundation, if you like, of this piece of information that we want to share. Okay, moving on to the 10th point, which is practice giving people the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to repeat that. Practice giving people the benefit of the doubt. So it's very easy, unfortunately, to harshly judge people, to harshly judge other people, and to harshly judge ourselves. We're often so quick to jump to conclusions from very, very limited facts. Maybe somebody's late. Maybe somebody has forgotten to call us. And it's just so easy to make judgments that they're lazy, they're incompetent, they don't care about me. No one cares about me. You can really go crazy with your generalizations. Yes, so somehow we need to we need to sort of recognise that and put a gap in there. And in this connection, I'd like to read a quote from the Islamic scholar Al-Ghazali in his book, The Duties of Brotherhood in Islam. He's using the word brotherhood, but it refers to all kinds of friendships, I would say, and all kinds of relationships. He says this: whenever a good interpretation is possible, or an excuse, whether obvious or far-fetched, can be advanced, this is obligatory in the duty of brotherhood. It has been said that you should seek 70 excuses for your brother's misdeed, and if your heart will accept none of them, you should turn the blame on yourself, saying to your heart, how hard you are. Your brother pleads 70 excuses, yet you will not accept him. You are the one at fault, not your brother. Now, Al-Ghazali there is maybe a bit strong. Okay? My little rule of thumb is, if you're noticing you're beginning to move into judgments about a friend or a partner or a relative, etc., see if you can find 3 possible reasons, 3 possible excuses. 3. I've jumped from Al-Ghazali 70 down to 3. If you can sort of entertain 3 possible reasons why they might be late, or they haven't done this or haven't done that, that might be enough to put a gap in your judgmentalism, basically. So if we don't have all the facts, we should do our best to assume the best about our friend. Who knows? Maybe our friend is late because they're helping somebody in a traffic accident. Or maybe one of their relatives has just had a major loss, and he's or she's trying to console them at the moment. Or maybe simply they've left their phone at home. It can be very, very simple things. So let's do our best to make generous interpretations. And if we need to forgive our friend, if we do get into resentment or anger or bitterness, well, it's our anger, it's our resentment, it's our bitterness. It's in our interest to do our best to let go of it and to let go of the friend. To forgive the friend, sorry, let go of the terrible slip. Okay, moving on to point 11. Do your best to be loyal to friends and partners when they are going through difficult times. Okay? Life is difficult. Certainly, life can be difficult, and suffering is of one kind or another. Suffering is a normal, natural part of life. Yes? Today it's me, tomorrow it's you. We all go through difficulties, whether it's we're feeling a bit depressed, or we're going through an illness, maybe we're sick, maybe somebody close to us has died. Yeah, we all will go through difficult physical and emotional times. And if we can be with people when they're going through difficult times, this is quite a powerful way of building and experiencing trust in that relationship. In the research that Brené Brown did, she said that going to funerals was one of the most frequently mentioned experiences where people felt their trust had deepened when a friend had turned up, let's say, at their mother's funeral. They regularly mentioned people going to funerals. Now, in this respect, maybe it's a very obvious point, but let people suffer. You don't have to fix them. Let them be sad. If you can. It's not easy. Let them be angry. Let them be depressed. It's such a relief when we don't have to do this all the time. Oh, I'm very happy. It's tiring to sort of put on a social mask. You don't have to cheer them up. If it happens, naturally happens, it happens. But if someone's suffering, if they have got a serious illness, well, it's not that, allow them to cry, please. It's not a problem. It's just sadness. It's not a monster. It's just a human emotion. It comes into being and it passes away. And if you can just be with that as much as possible without being too frightened. The problem is usually with us. We start getting scared of our own suffering. We start panicking, etc. But if we can be present with somebody in their suffering, that is an enormous gift we can give to another human being. Maybe we shouldn't expect too much of ourselves too. We do panic, we do feel uncomfortable, but we can just do our best. When we notice that we're getting tight, or we want to fix them, well, when we notice it, we can slip back into a more neutral position, so to speak. We can seek to relax the body, seek to relax the mind. To be honest, I'm thinking here of a very, very specific example. I won't use any names, but somebody who's done many courses here has a very serious illness right now in hospital. It's a very soft version of leukemia. She's only a young woman in her early to mid 30s, and I visited her just 2 or 3 days ago, and her mum was constantly trying to stop her from crying, and in the end, my friend got angry with the mother. Can you let me be sad, please? You've got enough on your plate with a disease, never mind people's fear. Okay, that was a rather heavy, serious point, wasn't it? Okay, point 12 is don't be afraid to apologise. We all make mistakes, yeah? None of us are exactly as we would like to be, and most of us, maybe all of us, have a certain amount of shame around that, okay? It's just the way it is right now. It's just the way it is. This is who we are right now. We're a combination of skillful qualities, positive qualities, and not so positive qualities. We're just a mixture. And sometimes we forget, sometimes we're thoughtless, selfish, sometimes we're greedy, sometimes we're not kind, sometimes we're unkind. Yeah? And if we notice that our actions and our attitude has had an effect, a bad effect, hurtful effect on other people, maybe groups of people, maybe whole organisations, well, if we apologise for that, ideally sincerely, well, that goes a long way to encouraging healing, basically, healing and connection. It does, I think, encourage trust. And as part of that, we might like to ask the person to forgive us. It's possible, even likely, that the person, you can't just forgive like that. Sometimes you can, but forgiveness is usually a process. So you can ask somebody to at least try to forgive you. Forgiveness is often, if it's something quite serious, is often a slow process of letting go of blame and a slow process of letting go of hurt and anger. Sometimes it can happen quickly. As I say, sometimes it takes time. We can only ask the person to do their best, basically. Okay, moving on to point 13. That's practice acting upon loving and generous impulses. And I'd like to mention an American psychologist. He died in 1960. He was the founding father of humanistic psychology. His name's Abraham Maslow. Some of you, no doubt, have heard of him. And he makes a point, a very, very non-Freudian point. He makes the point that we're often just as frightened of our nobility and our positive qualities as we are our dark side or our destructiveness. We're just as scared of the beauty inside us, if you like, as we are of the dark. And I think that was definitely true for me. That was a very important message for me to hear 25, 30 years ago. And in this connection also, I'd like to quote to you one of my favourite words by the Buddha. It comes from a text called the Dhammapada, interestingly from the chapter on evil. It goes like this, it's very short. Be quick to do what is morally beautiful. That's it. Someone help me here?
Yeah, two times. Ah.
Lovely. Often, our response to people, our response to a situation is a very skillful and noble response. Something in us just responds. We just want to share or to give or to respond. Our responses can be very noble. But the Buddha says, be quick to do what is morally beautiful. He didn't say, take your time. He didn't say, very, very slowly now, give the person a biscuit. You know, he used speed and quickness in the quote. What happens if we're slow? Often, what happens if we're slow to respond is that other factors start coming into our mind. Oh, I haven't got the time. Oh, I haven't got the money. Anyway, I don't think they really need it anyway. Doubt can take over. Doubt and indecision can take over. So that desire to buy that friend a book, that desire to send that person a postcard, that desire to send a beautiful text message of thanks may never happen. So I'm strongly suggesting that we notice, the first part of this practice is noticing our instant response. Yes, maybe you want to give them, 50 lira for something. You wait 3 minutes, it drops down to 20 lira, that wish. You wait an extra 10 minutes and you give them just 2 lira. But the original response was quite a strong response of generosity. And when we wait, it can just become sort of weaker and weaker. And it is, as I say, a very beautiful practice. If you take it seriously, it can take you in all sorts of strange places. You can have all sorts of strange experiences that you wouldn't have had just because you're taking this quote by the Buddha very seriously. Yeah, do your best to act on your generous impulses. See what happens. New life will unfold. I'm pretty confident about that. Point 14 might sound strange. Maybe not. It's this. Learn from our anger. Learn from our anger. We all get angry sometimes. Some of us get angry frequently. So what I'm suggesting here is that often, maybe not always, but often, if we investigate our anger, we can learn about our values. What values is our anger trying to protect? Just investigate, when you next get angry, what values are important to you? And when we discover our values, for example, your value could be considerateness. Your value could be non-exploitation. Your value could be sensitivity. Your value could be respect. So we can use our anger to A, become more aware of our values, and B, hopefully, to deepen our commitment to those values, that we want to bring those values more alive in our lives and in society. So point 14 was learn from your anger. Okay, point 15, my last point, is put spiritual development and insight first. Put spiritual development and insight first. In terms of action in the world, the mind is primary. All actions of speech and body come from the mind. We need to give maximum priority to cultivating the mind and cultivating the heart. Our mental states are really contagious. Suspicion breeds suspicion. Hatred breeds hatred. Love encourages love. Trust stimulates trust. It's a basic law in the universe. It's a very simple law. We can learn to deepen our trust and confidence in our own human powers. We need to give maximum priority to the human values of loving kindness, generosity, sincerity, contentment, and mental clarity. And we can cultivate the heart and cultivate the mind in so many different ways. I'm just going to offer you a few of those ways. Meditation, yoga, periods of silence, spending time in nature, reading good novels, listening to nourishing and inspiring music, having meaningful conversations with good friends, reflecting on your own human potential. These are all ways in which we can nourish the heart and nourish the mind. And traditionally in Buddhism, we can find liberation or freedom through what is often called the threefold way of ethical behaviour, meditation, and wisdom. And Buddhism confidently asserts that we can first weaken and then break the bonds of selfish desire, all forms of ill will and irritation, and also spiritual ignorance. There's a definite affirmation of this possibility within the Buddha's teaching. So let us learn as deeply as possible from our own rich experiences of life. Learn wise lessons from our own foolish and kind behaviour. And get intimate both with the idea and the reality of death and dying as a way of intensifying our awareness of what is really important in life. That's for you to get intimate with. That's for you to discover. And let us see, trust and feel with increasing clarity and conviction that we are not separate, that we're not separate from the rest of life, that there's a sacred intimacy with the whole of life. So I'm going to tell you remind you of all those 15 points now, just to refresh your memory. 1. Make mindful use of polite expressions. 2. Practice random acts of kindness. 3. Be hospitable to visitors, tourists, and refugees in your country. 4. Develop friendly connections with your neighbours. 5. Actively share positive news. 6. Be aware of how you speak about people who are not present. 7. Pass on praise and compliments. 8. Do your best to be sincere and honest. 9. If you don't know, say you don't know. 10. Practice giving people the benefit of the doubt. 11. Do your best to be loyal to friends and partners when they are going through difficult times. 12. Don't be afraid to apologise. 13. Practice acting upon loving and generous impulses. 14. Learn from your feelings of anger. And lastly, and most importantly, put spiritual development and insight first. So in this whole theme of trust, it's really tempting to look outside. It's really tempting to evaluate how trustworthy he is, she is, they are. And in this talk, I've been wanting to point the finger directly at our own minds and directly at our own lives. Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And Stephen Covey, who I quoted earlier, has got this great teaching where he encourages people to concentrate not on their sphere of concern, but on their sphere of influence. What is it that you can actually do? So I hope in making these 15 points that at least some of them have affected you, at least some of them have touched you. And I hope, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi, that we can be the change that we want to see in the world.